He built an empire that they thought they could steal. But when they pushed him out, they didn't just lose a man, they ignited a legacy that the boardroom felt colder than usual. We need new horsepower. The word struck like a sledgehammer. Walter Briggs sat at the end of the long, polished conference table, his hands folded tightly, coffee untouched. The chill in the room wasn't from the air conditioning, it was from the way 18 years of service could be erased in a single phrase. The voice belonged to David Halverson, chairman of the Gravora Group board. It echoed off the glass walls and ricocheted across Walter's chest like a death sentence. Walter Briggs, 58 years old, senior vice president of operations, or rather until 2 minutes ago he had been. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't let the heat of the betrayal show on his face. 18 years. He had built Gravora's logistics backbone from scratch, kept it alive during the 2008 recession, and navigated the 2020 economic freeze without firing a single driver. That history now sat buried under the phrase fresh outlook. The new blood. They were bringing in Chase Langford, 33, married to the CEO's daughter, a man with a degree in lifestyle marketing, not supply chains, a man who had never scheduled a freight pickup or negotiated a fuel contract. Walter's mind was already wandering in his jacket pocket, the corner of a business card jabbed into his ribs, a card he had kept for 3 months. He had thought maybe, just maybe, he'd never need to use it. But now, when the meeting ended, Walter walked the long corridor back to his office. Each step felt like closing a chapter, the kind that didn't come with a satisfying ending. The office was quiet, too quiet. He began packing. His mug, a photo of his daughter, Catherine, an old paperweight from his first Petroax deal. The farewell party will be held next Friday. Just enough time for Chase to follow him around like a shadow, asking dumb questions while pretending to understand the intricacies of freight load balancing. His phone buzzed. Catherine. How did the board meeting go, Dad? He stared at the screen. For a while, Walter. Big changes coming. He couldn't tell her yet. Not now. Not while the next step was still a mystery. But it wouldn't be for long. The next morning, he arrived before sunrise. He stood at his office window and watched the Houston skyline bloom in shades of orange and gold. He remembered everything. The Petrax deal. The midnight shipment in 2018. Mortgaged his own house to make payroll in 2009. Every sacrifice, every crisis, averted. And all of it dismissed because of Chase Langford's family connections. 3 months ago, Alyssa Cormack from Petroax Industries had called. She'd asked off the record if any leadership changes were coming. Walter had been honest, but vague. That's when she gave him her business card. If anything changes, call me. At the time, he hadn't thought he'd need to, but now, Friday. The farewell gathering. The room had a cake with thank you. Walter scrawled in frosting half-hearted applause. Polite nods. Then Chase took the stage. Walter has done great work. Here, he said with that smirk that screamed disrespect. But business evolves. We need new energy, new ideas. Your time is over, old man. The room went dead silent. Walter didn't flinch. He shook the hands of those who mattered and walked out. In the parking lot, as the sun set across the lot where he had parked for 18 years, he finally made the call. Alyssa answered on the second ring. I was wondering when you'd call, she said. The board made their move, Walter replied. Chase Langford, right? That's right. I think it's time we had dinner. They met the next evening, a quiet steakhouse, a corner booth. Alyssa didn't waste time. This contract exists because of you, Walter, she said. Chase asked me last week if we needed our chemicals delivered in refrigerated trucks. Walter almost laughed. Almost. Then she pulled out the proposal. Paybacks Maritime, a company on the rise, with financial backing and ambition to match. They needed leadership. Gravora Group had 60 days left on its Petroax contract. If we choose not to renew, Alyssa said, they lose their biggest client. And if Walter joined Paybacks, he would bring more than leadership. He would bring relationships, trust, and experience. It was more than an offer. It was an opening move in a game Walter Briggs had just begun to play. Walter didn't need 48 hours to make a decision. He had decided the moment Chase Langford called him an old man whose time was over. By Monday morning, Walter had called Paybacks Maritime. The lobby of their modern office complex near Houston's ship channel looked like a vision of the future. Sharp contrast to Gravora Group's dated, polished brass decor. The difference was symbolic. Gravora had become stagnant. Paybacks was moving. Victoria Henley, Paybacks Maritime's CEO, greeted him with a firm handshake. A former ExxonMobil executive, Victoria radiated the competence of someone who knew the Tehran and how to dominate it. Walter, your reputation precedes you, she said as they sat across from each other in her office. The Petroax relationship alone is worth more than most companies' annual revenue. She was direct. Walter appreciated that. Victoria revealed that Paybacks had been planning their expansion into inland logistics for 18 months. But they needed the right person, someone with credibility, leadership, and client relationships. Someone like Walter Briggs. What Alyssa hadn't shared was Gravora's actual financial condition. 3 major client contracts had quietly terminated over the last 6 months. Victoria provided a financial analysis showing Gravora using short-term credit lines and accumulating risky debt. The desperate boardroom move to replace Walter with Chase now made chilling sense. They've been relying on family connections to keep the lights on, Victoria said, but you're the one clients trusted. Walter reviewed the proposal. Executive consultant. Full operational authority. Equity stake. No board politics. 2. Other former Gravora clients were already in talks with Paybacks. Walter had managed both. Personally, if they came over, Gravora would lose nearly 60% of their major revenue streams. This wasn't just a career move, it was a full-blown industry shift. He accepted. By Tuesday morning, Walter had signed the contract. His start date was set for the following Monday. He called Alyssa first. It's done, he said. Excellent, she replied. I'll be meeting Chase this Friday to officially end our contract. Walter could already imagine the panic. Chase is scrambling for explanations. Too late. By Wednesday and Thursday, Walter worked quietly from home, building transition plans and reviewing Paybacks' capabilities. Their infrastructure impressed him. They were more advanced than Gravora in several key logistics areas. Then came the call. Grav Aura Group. Walter, said the assistant, Mr. Davidson would like to schedule a meeting regarding transition planning. Walter almost laughed. Tell Mr. Davidson I no longer do transition planning for Gravora. My employment ended last Friday. Have a good evening. By Friday morning, Gravora's unraveling had gone public. Victoria entered his office with her phone in hand. A news alert from the Houston Business Journal. Gravora Group loses major client. Stock drops 15%. Petrox Industries had filed a public disclosure. They were severing ties with Gravora. Walter's phone buzzed again. A message from Chase. Walter, this is Chase Langford. We need to talk. Call me. He showed Victoria. I think Chase is having a bad day, she said, and it's about to get worse. That day, 2 more former clients reached out. By nightfall, the Houston logistics community was abuzz. Walter Briggs was back and available. He made no statements. He didn't gloat. He just answered the phone. 3 weeks later, Victoria handed Walter a copy of the Houston Business Journal. The front page headline, Gravora Group seeks emergency funding after client exodus. The article outlined a company in freefall. Pet had been the first to go. Then Morrison Chemical, then Gulf States Energy. All of them are now with Baylor. Within days, Gravora had lost nearly 70% of its client base. Chase resigned. The CEO was forced into emergency bridge loans just to keep payroll going. There was more. A smaller article revealed that Chase Langford had joined his father-in-law real estate firm. Logistics wasn't for him after all. Victoria also mentioned that Jacob Miller, a former protege of Walter's and now Gravora's new operations manager, had reached out. He wanted to explore subcontracting. We'll talk, Walter said. If they can meet our standards, we can find space. 6 months later, Walter drove past Gravora's old headquarters. A for-lease sign hung in the front window. They had downsized, relocated, and were focusing on local deliveries. Jacob was doing his best, but the collapse had been catastrophic. Pulled into a cafe and ordered coffee. His phone buzzed. Catherine, Dad, I saw the article in Forbes. Paybacks is crushing it. Proud of you. Paybacks had expanded to 3 new states. The equity stake Walter had been given, now worth more than he'd earned in 20 years at Gravora. But it wasn't just the money. It was the fulfillment of building something new, a place where relationships still mattered. He walked into the office. Victoria was reviewing new expansion proposals. Ready to change another industry, she asked. Walter smiled. Let's get to work. The phone rang. And just like always, Walter answered. By the second quarter, Paybacks Maritime had become the name whispered in every logistics boardroom across Houston. Walter Briggs sat at the head of his new division's war room. Maps of route, grids and chemical supply networks glowing on the smart wall behind him. Everything moved faster here. Tighter margins, higher stakes. But he welcomed the pressure after all. Pressure revealed character. Paybacks was expanding rapidly, but Walter remained grounded. He kept his team small and tight-knit. Every manager he hired came from the trenches field veterans, not ivory tower theorists. Some were former Gravora drivers and operations coordinators who had followed him out of loyalty. They called him Mr. Briggs out of habit, but Walter insisted on first names. Still, the respect never left their eyes. The emotional toll of the past year hadn't fully faded though. Late nights, Walter often caught himself staring out his office window. The city below, a scatter of blinking lights. Sometimes, when sleep refused to come, he'd drive past the old Gravora building, now dark and boarded up. It felt like driving past a tombstone, but he wasn't alone. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Alyssa Cormack stopped by the office. She'd just returned from a supply chain conference in Denver, and her trench coat was soaked. Figured I'd deliver this in person, she said, holding up a folder marked Morrison and Cormack Renewals. Walter took it, but his eyes were on her. There was something softer in her demeanor. Today's less business, more personal. You didn't need to make the drive just for paperwork, he said. No, she replied, but I wanted to. They sat together by the glass wall, the rain streaking across the skyline. I've been thinking about Gravora lately, Alyssa said. How many people stayed loyal to an empty name? while the man who was that name quietly rebuilt elsewhere. Walter's voice was steady. People don't always realize what matters until it's gone. Exactly. There was silence. Comfortable, reflective. She stood to leave but turned back. Dinner tomorrow. Walter nodded, a small smile pulling at the corner of his mouth. I'd like that. Friday's dinner turned into Saturday brunch, then long Sunday walks through Memorial Park. They didn't rush anything. Both bore the scars of boardrooms and betrayal, but there was something genuine blooming between them, a shared understanding that went deeper than numbers and contracts. By mid-year, Walter had successfully negotiated new contracts with 3 mid-sized petroleum companies and onboarded over a dozen key drivers from competing firms. Paybacks' inland logistics division was not only profitable, it was outperforming every other sector, but not everyone was celebrating. One morning, Victoria Henley called Walter into her office. Her tone was sharp. "We've received a legal notice," she said, "from Gravora Group." Walter raised a brow, alleging breach of non-solicitation agreements. "They're claiming you poached clients and staff." Walter remained calm. "They replaced me without severance or proper transition. I never signed a non-compete, and any contact I made was initiated by clients." Victoria nodded. "Our legal team says the claims won't hold up, but it's a PR move. They're bleeding, and they want to make noise." Walter leaned back. "Let them. The market has already made its choice." Still, the lawsuit wasn't without consequence. Several potential clients paused negotiations, waiting to see how things unfolded. Walter, however, focused on what he could control: service, consistency, and relationships. Alyssa became a steady presence. Though she remained with Paybacks, she and Walter often shared weekend hikes or quiet evenings, reviewing strategic plans over takeout. "Do you ever regret leaving?" she asked once. He didn't hesitate. "No, I regret staying as long as I did." Then came the twist. 6 months after Gravora filed their lawsuit, a whistleblower surfaced. An internal operations report from Gravora was leaked anonymously to the press. The report contained damning details, falsified client satisfaction data, delayed payments to vendors, and a scheme to repackage older chemicals under new labels. The Houston Business Journal ran the story under the headline, "Rot from Within. Gravora's fall isn't over." Walter read it over coffee. No satisfaction, just a deep, reflective sigh. Victoria summoned him later that day. "We're getting flooded with press calls. You'll likely be asked for comment." "I have no comment," Walter said, "but I think it's time we looked at Gravora's remaining contracts. There might be a few salvageable relationships worth exploring." Victoria grinned, always thinking 3 steps ahead. "I've played this game long enough to know when it's checkmate." That night, Walter received a message from Jacob Miller. "Jacob, I never said it before, but you were right about everything. Chase the board. I tried to clean it up, but they never gave me a real chance. Walter, you were one of the good ones. Jacob, still are. Jacob, if things fall apart entirely here, do you think there might be a place for me at Betrayal someday? Walter, let's talk next week." As Walter set his phone down, he looked out the window again. The city pulsed below. People are chasing money, influence, and control. But not all games were won by speed. Some were won by patience, by loyalty, by long games. And his was far from over. 2 weeks after the whistleblower's leak, Gravora Group was issued a formal investigation notice by the Federal Logistics Commission. An anonymous source, almost certainly someone within their finance department, had confirmed that the internal report published by the Houston Business Journal was just the beginning. Walter Briggs sat across from Victoria Henley in the Bay executive boardroom, quietly reading the official statement. "They're finished," Victoria said. Walter didn't respond immediately. He ran a hand over the back of his neck and sighed. "Not yet, but this is check, maybe check and a half." He knew companies like Gravora, they'd survive on fumes for months. There'd be last-ditch pitches to investors, quiet lawsuits, settled out of court, and a flurry of PR attempts to paint the whistleblower as a disgruntled former employee. But the core, it was rotting. Paybacks, meanwhile, was experiencing a different kind of problem: rapid, near-explosive growth. Since the leak, 5 more companies have reached out with interest in switching their logistics contracts. Walter had spent every day meeting new potential clients, vetting their needs, building operational maps, and restructuring his team. But success brought shadows. That same week, Walter received a voicemail from a blocked number. "Mr. Briggs, you don't know me, but I used to work for Chase Langford. You need to know something about what's coming." The message was short, unclear, and ended abruptly. The next morning, an envelope was slid under Walter's office door. No name, no address. Inside was a copy of a confidential email thread. It appeared to be between Chase Langford, an investor named Preston Carrick, and a third-party consulting group. The subject, a planned smear campaign against Walter Briggs. "He's not clean," one line read. "Dig into his 2009 mortgage bailout, there's leverage there." Walter closed the folder slowly. His stomach tightened. That year, 2009, he had personally taken out a second mortgage on his home to help meet payroll during the recession. There had been no fraud, no crime. But the optics? In the wrong hands? twisted enough. He stood up and walked to the window. Houston shimmered below. He had fought for everything, his reputation, his career, his team, and now, someone from the ruins of Gravora was trying to tarnish that legacy. He didn't flinch. Instead, he called Victoria. "We need to get ahead of this." Paybacks' legal and PR teams launched a swift counter. Within 48 hours, a public statement was issued. Walter Briggs had voluntarily leveraged personal assets to protect employees during the recession, a move that was praised by the workforce at the time. Former drivers even recorded testimonial videos describing how Walter's actions had saved their families. Public sentiment shifted in his favor again. The whispers died, but Walter had no time to celebrate. The bigger decision was still ahead. Industries was proposing a 5-year exclusive agreement with Paybacks worth $600 million. Accepting it would make Paybacks the dominant logistics player across 5 states. But there was a catch. To handle it, they would need to double the inland logistics division. Fast. Walter would need to hire more than 50 new team members. Scale, infrastructure, and risks stretching their operational bandwidth dangerously thin. Victoria gave him the final say. That night, over dinner at a small bistro with Alyssa, Walter laid it out. "This deal could make or break everything we've built. If we move too fast and drop even one contract, our reputation takes a hit. But if we pull it off, you'll reshape the logistics landscape in the entire Southwest." She finished. He studied her. "Would you come on board if we do it? Leave Petroax help lead the expansion?" Alyssa smiled, then reached into her purse. She pulled out a folded resignation letter. "I already have." Walter blinked. "You serious?" "I want to build something. Again, not just manage it." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he raised his glass. 2 new beginnings. By the end of the quarter, Paybacks Maritime signed the Petroax deal. The headlines the next morning called it the logistics coup of the decade. Walter Briggs was named Executive Vice President of Inland Operations. Alyssa was announced as Director of Strategic Partnerships. Jacob Miller joined their team a month later. Gravora's old headquarters were auctioned off to a real estate group. The company now operates under a rebranded name, Gravix, offering limited, third-party warehousing. No clients, no real contracts, just a shadow. Walter never gloated. When Chase Langford published a LinkedIn post 6 months later, blaming corporate betrayal for his career detour, Walter didn't comment. He didn't need to. He had already won. Late one evening, as he locked up the new Paybacks Operations Center, Walter paused under the glow of the security light. Trucks were being loaded behind him. Voices echoed from inside. The pulse of something real. Alyssa stepped out of her car. "Ready?" she asked. Walter turned, keys in hand, the city breathing around them. "I've never been more ready." They walked off together into the night, not as survivors, but as builders of something enduring.